In 1854, a surveying team in Missouri measured a doorway inside an unmarked stone structure near the confluence of two rivers. The doorway stood 11 feet tall. The lintel was a single slab of limestone weighing an estimated 4 tons. The report noted that the threshold was worn smooth, as if used frequently. Then the report ends. No explanation was given for who built it or why a functional doorway would need to be that size. The official record calls it a frontier storage building, possibly used for grain. That would explain the stone construction. It does not explain the ceiling height of nearly 14 feet or the iron brackets bolted into the wall at 9 feet above the floor. It does not explain why the windows are positioned so high that no average person could see out of them without a ladder. What it also does not explain is why similar structures, with similar proportions, appear in land surveys from the same decade across 6 states. The survey teams never called them unusual. They simply recorded the dimensions and moved on. But if you line up those dimensions, something starts to emerge. Doorways between 10 and 12 feet. Ceiling beams that required no average human to duck. Staircases with risers too tall to climb comfortably. All of it built as if the people using these spaces were taller than anyone walking the earth today. Once you notice it in Missouri, you start seeing it in Illinois, then Ohio, then Pennsylvania. Stone foundations that supported structures no longer standing. Barn layouts that made no sense unless the occupants were much larger. Forge tables described as giant size in estate inventories from the 1840s. And then, by 1860, those descriptions stop appearing. There is a map held in the archives of the Smithsonian, dated 1851, that marks several locations along the Ohio River as giant mound sites. The map was referenced in congressional land reports but was removed from public circulation in 1876. No reason was given. A request to view the map today results in a reference code that leads to an empty folder. In 1858, a county clerk in Indiana recorded the exhumation of a burial mound during railroad construction. He noted the recovery of skeletal remains measuring, according to the supervising engineer, over 8 feet in length. The county archives still have the clerk's log. They do not have the engineer's report. That report was filed with the railroad company, which dissolved in 1863. No secondary copies have been located. There are at least 40 similar accounts between 1830 and 1890. Most were published in local papers. A few appeared in state geological surveys. None were investigated further. By the early 1900s, they were no longer mentioned. What happened in the 1850s that would cause such a clean break in the record? Not gradually, not over decades, but within a single generation. Around the same time, the Smithsonian began a program to catalog and collect skeletal remains from indigenous burial mounds across the frontier. Thousands of remains were transferred to Washington. By 1870, the program had categorized the remains as part of a study on cranial variants and indigenous migration. The study concluded that all recovered remains fell within normal human range. But the original field measurements recorded before transfer tell a different story. Several entries list femur bones exceeding 26 inches, which would correspond to individuals well over 7 feet tall. Those measurements were later annotated as anomalous or recording error. No re-examination was conducted. There is also the matter of the tools. In Pennsylvania, a farmhand unearthed a copper axe head in 1843 that weighed 14 pounds. The handle socket suggested a grip circumference far larger than anything a normal hand could hold. The artifact was donated to a university, which cataloged it, then lost it during a collection transfer in 1902. The original sketch still exists. The axe does not. So the question is not whether large people existed. The question is what kind of event could remove them so completely that within 30 years, their structures were abandoned, their tools were lost, and their remains were reclassified or erased. Not war. War leaves records. Not plague. Plague leaves mass graves and detailed mortality logs. This was something else. Something that required the removal not just of people but of the memory of people. There are no photographs of these individuals. That is expected, given the timeline. But there are also no portraits, no folk descriptions, no family legends passed down in the regions where these doorways and tools were found. As if an entire population was expunged not just physically but culturally. And then the land was resettled. Quickly. By 1870, most of the counties where these structures were found had been surveyed again. New property lines were drawn. The old stone buildings were either demolished or repurposed. In some cases, they were buried entirely. There is a foundation in southern Illinois, for instance, that was covered by 6 feet of soil during a railroad embankment project in 1869. The structure is still there. It has simply been hidden. Why would a functional building be buried instead of dismantled? If these were just old barns or storage sheds, they would have been torn down for materials. Stone was expensive. Iron was valuable. But they were not torn down. They were erased. And the people who used them, the ones who wore down those thresholds and bolted brackets into stone walls 9 feet off the ground? If they left, where did they go? If they died, where are the graves? There are no answers in the archives. There is only absence. And absence, when it is this consistent, starts to look like something deliberate. You begin to wonder what the land looked like before the surveyors arrived, and what it took to make sure no one would ask that question again. If you're still thinking about this, consider leaving a comment or subscribing. There's more to look at, and most of it has been sitting in plain view the entire time.